Good morning and welcome to John Beck. This is your principal, Mr. Lin, and I hope that you had a wonderful weekend and President's Day. Today is Tuesday, February 18th, 2025, and it is a day C. For instrumentals, it's a day 1. Now, before we kick off this wonderful day, I want to invite you, as I always do, to please stand and face the flag for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Now go ahead and take a seat. I'm so happy that you guys are here in school. You guys are an amazing group of students, and I'm just proud to know that you're part of our amazing school. Now we've got 3 expectations here at the school. You know what they are. Number 1, be respectful to yourself as well as to others. That means being respectful to your teachers. It means being respectful to your classmates. And it means being respectful to those who you might not even get along with. Number 2, show that you are responsible. There's a lot of things in life you don't have control of, and I know that. But the older I get, the more you start realizing you actually are in control of quite a bit. What you can do with your hands and your feet and the words that come out of your mouth. What are you going to do when nobody else is around, right? Like the setting matters. Many of us know how to act in responsible ways when we have a teacher around. Many of us are tempted to maybe not be as responsible when there isn't a grown-up around. My question to you is, how do you control yourself? How do you show responsibility for the things that you can control? That also includes getting your homework done. That includes how we handle ourselves using the T-flex, perhaps. We have control over that. Getting away from our rock brain, thinking in positive can-do attitudes, handling our hands and our feet, the words that come out of our mouths, keeping our promises, all of those are part of responsibility. And if you can imagine 450 kids being responsible for their little part, will make a huge difference in our school. Number 3, show that you are ready to be the best version of yourself. There are many versions of ourselves out there. I think by now we know that. Sometimes we use the wolf analogy, and there are many wolves within us battling to represent us. How do we allow the one that's good and kind and compassionate and resilient to win? Well, feed it. Those are our 3 expectations. It's not much, and yet it's everything. It is still February, and it is Black History Month. In the first 2 weeks of Black History Month, we've talked about stories that have some connection to Lancaster County. We live in Lancaster County, Pennsylvania. We started with Harriet Tubman. She's a classic girl power historical figure. She was a former slave, escaped, came back, risked becoming a slave again in order to free other slaves, became a scout in the United States Army during the Civil War, fought as a soldier, led a raid, and in her older years, she fought for girls and women and the right to vote. Her connection to Pennsylvania is the fact that she was a slave in Maryland, and when she escaped, getting to Pennsylvania was her first step, and that was actually in the Philadelphia-Lancaster region. Last week, we talked about the 54th Massachusetts. It was the first officially formed northern unit of African Americans, and most of those African Americans in that army unit were free. Some of them were former slaves, but they were free. They had the option to choose to join or not. And many of them joined because they wanted to go down south and free other African Americans from being slaves. 1/3 of the soldiers that signed up actually came from this region, southeastern Pennsylvania, from Harrisburg out to Philadelphia, which includes Lancaster County. Many of the soldiers who fought for that Massachusetts unit in the United States Army and proved themselves to be as brave as they say they are, well, they came from this area in which we live. Before I dive into this week's story, I want to ask you a question. You're elementary school students. You belong to John Beck. You're part of our community. But what if I told you you weren't allowed to come to John Beck? Oh, sure, John Beck is close to your homes and is part of our community. But what if I told you you couldn't come here? What if I said you couldn't even come to Warwick? You had to go all the way out to Manheim Township. You had to go to those schools over there. And the only reason for that is for the color of your skin. Or honestly, for any physical characteristic, the color of your hair, what country your family originally came from, things that you can't help. What if I told you you couldn't come to John Beck because of that? In the early part of the 1900s, African American kids were not allowed to be in school with white kids. It was called segregation. Segregation comes from the root word segregate, which means to separate. And for a long time, that was considered fair. But if you really think about it, separating kids isn't really fair, especially if it's based on the color of your skin. So this story actually has nothing to do with Pennsylvania, but it does impact Pennsylvania in the future. It starts out in the state of Kansas, in the city of Topeka, and it surrounds the story of a 7-year-old girl who was in 3rd grade who had to ride the bus in order to get to her school because it was for African Americans. The school that's in her community, that's closest to her, was reserved only for white kids. For the first part of her elementary school career, that's what she did. Well, her parents didn't like that, and frankly, neither did little Miss Linda Brown, 7-year-old Linda Brown. They decided to fight this. They thought it was unfair. They thought it was unfair that she had to go to a different school only because of the color of her skin. I'm out of time. So this is a great preview as we go into tomorrow. I will share with you a little bit more about Linda Brown and what she and her mom and dad decided to do to challenge this system that forced kids to go to different schools only because of the color of their skin. I love you. I care about you. I'm here to encourage you. Go spread that message to other people. I can't wait to see you guys around. Have an awesome day. And as always, I like you just the way you are.